The reek of desperation and stale synth ale clung to the air in the Stardust Saloon, a smell Jax knew better than his own name. He stared at the 5 cards in his trembling hand, a useless constellation of junk. Across the polished obsidian table, the Corsair King, Xylo, watched him, his 4 insectoid eyes unblinking. Xylo wasn't just a crime lord. He was a collector of broken things, and tonight he intended to add Jax's starship, the Vagrant, to his collection. It was the only thing Jax had left of his old life, the only thing that mattered. The 2 hulking Krogar guards behind him shifted their weight, their armored hides scraping together, a sound like grinding stone that set Jax's teeth on edge. "The pot is yours to call, human," Xylo's voice clicked and whirred, a translator implant turning his native chittering into flat, metallic words. Jax had nothing left to bet. He'd lost his credits, his cargo, even the deed to a worthless asteroid. He was bluffing on empty, a void so vast it mirrored the one outside the station's grimy viewports. He forced a cocky grin, the one that usually got him out of trouble. "I'm thinking, Your Majesty. A hand this good deserves a worthy wager." He was lying through his teeth. He had a pair of 3s and a whole lot of nothing. "You have nothing left," Xylo rasped, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Your ship is forfeit." "The game is over." Jax's heart hammered against his ribs. He was about to lose everything. Suddenly, a new voice, smooth as aged Nebula whiskey, cut through the tension. "Perhaps the gentleman requires a new steak." Every head in the bar turned. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the lurid glow of the station's main concourse, was a figure of impossible elegance. He looked ancient, his skin the color of cracked parchment, his eyes holding the cold, distant light of dying stars. He moved with a silence that was more profound than the bar's sudden hush. "And who?" Xylo's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Are you?" The old man smiled, a faint chilling expression. "A patron of games of chance. I am Lord Valerius, and I would like to sponsor the human." Valerius glided to their table, his gaze sweeping over the cards, over Jax's desperate face, and finally settling on Xylo. "I will cover all the human's debts to you, and wager a prize of equal, if not greater, value than his ship." Xylo's 4 eyes narrowed. What prize could possibly be worth more than the Vagrant? Valerius didn't speak. He simply snapped his fingers. The air beside him shimmered, like heat haze off desert sand, and she appeared. She wasn't just beautiful, she was a cataclysm. Her hair was the silver of a comet's tail, her skin a pale, luminous blue, and her eyes were molten gold. A tracery of faint, glowing lines like constellations pulsed just beneath her skin. She wore a simple, dark tunic, yet she carried herself with the authority of a queen. "I wager my daughter, Seraphina," Valerius said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried to every corner of the silent room. "Against the pot, the human's ship, and his freedom." Jax stared, speechless. This had to be a hallucination. People weren't property, not in this part of the galaxy, but Xylo's greed was a palpable thing. He leaned forward, his multifaceted eyes drinking in the sight of the woman. "A binding contract?" he hissed. "Irrevocable," Valerius confirmed. Jax's mind screamed at him to run, to fold, to do anything but play this hand. But he saw the glint in Xylo's eyes. The crime lord was so blinded by this new, impossible prize that he was no longer thinking about the cards. He was thinking about possession. This was the only way, the only chance. Jax took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of bravado he had left. "I'll see your bet," he said to Xylo, "and I'll raise you. My future. All of it." He looked at Valerius. "Deal." Valerius nodded once. The woman, Seraphina, looked at Jax, and for a fleeting moment, her golden eyes held not contempt, but something that looked terrifyingly like pity. Xylo, confident in Jax's ruin, slammed his own cards onto the table. 3 aces and 2 kings, a full house, a monstrous, nearly unbeatable hand. The Krogar guards chuckled, a low, rumbling sound of finality. Xylo reached a clawed hand toward the pile of betting chips. "The game is—" "Not yet," Jax said, his voice steady. He slowly, deliberately, laid his own cards down. 4 of a kind, 4 3s, and the final card. a blank data slate card he'd palmed from a table earlier. A null card. An interesting hand, Jax said, his heart threatening to explode. Standard Terran rules, a null card is a wild. But under the Corsair Confederacy rules, Article 7, subsection B, it disqualifies the hand. A lie. A complete and utter fabrication. He was betting his life on the fact that a puffed-up ego like Xylo wouldn't know the obscure, non-existent bylaws of his own criminal empire. Silence. Xylo stared at the blank card. His face, an unreadable mask of chitin, swiveled to his guards, who just shrugged their massive shoulders. The bluff was so specific, so audacious that it had to be true. Xylo's translator whirred, spitting out a stream of furious clicks. He stood, knocking the table over, and stormed out of the bar, his guards trailing behind him. Jax had won. He had won his ship. He had won his freedom. And as he looked at the impossibly beautiful woman and her terrifying father, he realized with a sinking feeling of absolute dread that he had just made the worst mistake of his entire life. The victory felt like ash in Jax's mouth. The Stardust Saloon slowly came back to life, its patrons whispering and staring, but Lord Valerius and his daughter Seraphina seemed to exist in a pocket of absolute silence. "A masterful deception," Valerius said, his voice laced with something that might have been admiration. "You saw the flaw in your opponent's character, not his cards. That is a rare talent." Jax pushed himself to his feet, his legs still shaking. "Look, I don't want any trouble. The debt is settled. I'll just take my ship and—" He was cut off by Seraphina's laugh, a sound like shattering crystal. "You think it's that simple? You fool! You didn't just win a game. You accepted a covenant." Jax blinked. "A what now?" Before Valerius could explain, a searing pain erupted on the back of Jax's right hand. He cried out, clutching it, and when he pulled it away, a mark was burned into his skin. It was half of an intricate glowing symbol, a celestial sigil that pulsed with a soft silver light. He looked over at Seraphina, who was examining her own right hand, where the exact same mark, the other half of the sigil, now blazed with a blue incandescence. "The marriage covenant is sealed," Valerius announced to the silent bar. "By the ancient laws, you are now bound. Life force to life force. Soul to soul." Jax's blood ran cold. "Husband," he sputtered, the word tasting like poison. "You can't be serious." "That's illegal!" "The laws of your little Galactic Federation are children's rules," Seraphina said, her golden eyes flashing with anger. "My father plays by older, more binding ones. And you, gambler, just sat down at his table." Suddenly, the main doors of the saloon were blasted inward, ripped from their hinges by a concussive force. Figures in crimson assault armor, the sigil of the Obsidian Hand Syndicate emblazoned on their chests, poured into the room, their plasma rifles leveled. "Seraphina of House Valerius." The lead trooper's voice boomed through a helmet modulator. "By order of High Lord Malachor, you are to surrender immediately." "Malachor!" Seraphina spat the name like a curse. "My obsessive homicidal ex-fiancé." He really must learn to take no for an answer. She moved with a speed that defied belief. One moment she was standing by the table, the next she was a blur of motion, disarming two troopers and using one of them as a shield. Valerius, meanwhile, seemed utterly unconcerned. He simply gestured to a dark corner of the bar. "Your escape awaits. Do try to keep her alive, son-in-law. Her value is considerable." The air in the corner of the room buckled, tearing open with a silent scream to reveal a swirling vortex of emerald and violet energy. A private fold gate. "Go where?" "What is happening?" Jax yelled over the blaster fire. Seraphina grabbed his arm, her grip like tempered steel. "Less questions, more running!" she yelled, pulling him toward the portal. Her touch sent a jolt through him, not just of pain from the mark on his hand, but of something else. He felt a dizzying flash of her emotions, fury, fear, and a deep, bone-aching resentment. "Trust me on this," she said, her face close to his, her golden eyes wild. The last thing Jax saw before they plunged into the swirling chaos of the fold gate was Lord Valerius, calmly seating himself back at the obsidian table, shuffling a deck of cards as if nothing had happened. They tumbled out of the fold gate and onto the cold metal deck of a ship's cargo bay. The transition was nauseating, like being turned inside out and reassembled by a drunk mechanic. Jax landed hard, his head spinning. Serafina, however, landed with the grace of a predator, already scanning their surroundings. "Welcome to the Vagrant," Jax groaned, pushing himself up. "My ship. Or I guess our ship now." The brand on his hand throbbed in time with his heartbeat. "Don't get comfortable," Serafina snapped, moving towards the cockpit. "Malakor's forces will have tracked the gate's energy signature. We have minutes, if that." She swept through the ship's cramped corridors as if she owned the place, her eyes taking in every detail. "Quaint," she muttered, a clear insult. "How does this relic even achieve orbit?" "She's got it where it counts," Jax shot back, feeling a surge of defensiveness for his beloved ship. He followed her into the cockpit and was about to shove her out of the pilot's seat when he saw her hands fly across the controls. The Vagrant, which usually took a solid 10 minutes of coaxing and prayer to power up, roared to life instantly. The engines hummed with a power he'd never heard before. "What did you do?" he asked, stunned. "I bypassed your antique power conduits and routed energy directly from the ship's core," she said, not looking at him. A simple trick. Through the cockpit viewport, Jax could see the Stardust saloon station receding as they pulled away. And then, 3 obsidian hand cruisers blinked into existence, emerging from hyperspace to block their path. "So," Jax said, strapping himself into the co-pilot's chair, "care to tell me why I've just been forcibly married to a fugitive space princess who's being hunted by a guy named Malakor?" Serafina executed a tight, evasive barrel roll, the Vagrant groaning in protest as G-forces pressed Jax into his seat. "Exiled heir, not princess," she corrected, her knuckles white on the controls. "And Malakor wants to control the Ascendant Throne, the seat of my family's power. By our laws, the throne can only be claimed through a binding marriage covenant. He was supposed to be my partner, but I refused. I chose exile over being his puppet. So your father's solution was to pawn you off on the first down-on-his-luck gambler he could find," Jax demanded, the injustice of it all boiling in his gut. Another blast from the cruisers rocked the ship. A warning light flashed on Jax's console. "Shields at 80%! "My father doesn't do anything without a reason," she said, her voice tight. "He believes in an old prophecy, a legend that the throne's curse could only be broken by a bond forged not of politics, but of pure chance. A wild card. Me," Jax said flatly. "I'm the wild card." "Lucky you," she said without a trace of humor. Suddenly, a wave of crippling pain shot up Jax's arm from the brand on his hand. He gasped, slumping in his seat. Across the cockpit, Serafina flinched, her own hand flying to her chest. "What was that?" he grit out. "The Covenant," she explained, her breath ragged. "It's sinking our life forces. We feel each other's pain now, our emotions. It will only get stronger." He could feel it then, a trickle of her cold, fierce determination pouring into his mind, pushing back against his own panic. It was the most invasive, intimate thing he'd ever experienced. "I hate this," he said. "Get in line," she replied. She yanked back on the controls, diving the Vagrant into a dense asteroid field. The cruisers followed, firing relentlessly. "Can you shoot?" she yelled. "Of course I can shoot!" He grabbed the weapon controls, his fingers finding the familiar triggers. "Then do it! Unless you want to find out what happens when one of us dies." Jax targeted the lead cruiser's primary weapon array and fired. The Vagrant's cannons, usually sluggish, responded instantly, firing a supercharged blast that struck the cruiser's shields with devastating force. Serafina glanced at him, a flicker of surprise in her golden eyes. "Not bad, gambler." "I have my moments," he said, lining up another shot. As they weaved through the asteroids, working in an uncanny, unspoken rhythm, Jax realized the horrifying truth. The Covenant wasn't just a bond. It was a circuit. Her impossible skills were flowing into him just as his desperate, improvisational luck was flowing into her. They weren't just two people in a cockpit anymore. They were becoming a single, terrifyingly effective weapon. and as another blast rocked the ship, throwing them against each other, their branded hands meeting with a searing spark of energy, he felt a sudden, unwelcome jolt of her fierce, defiant spirit. It was exhilarating, and it scared him more than anything else. Deeper they plunged into the asteroid field, a chaotic dance of rock and shadow. The Obsidian hand cruisers were relentless, but the Vagrant, supercharged by Serafina's innate connection to technology, moved like a ghost. Jax found his targeting systems were responding before he even finished a thought, his reflexes sharpened by the low hum of Serafina's focused fury he could now feel in the back of his own mind. It was like a cheat code for survival. "They're trying to box us in," she said, her voice strained. She pointed to the nav screen. "They're predicting our trajectory." "So let's give them a new one," Jax countered, his gambler's instincts flaring. "Kill the port inertial dampener on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Now!" She didn't question him. She hit the control, and the Vagrant lurched violently to one side, spinning on its axis as if crippled. One of the pursuing cruisers, anticipating their old path, overshot them completely, flying directly into the path of its wingman. The resulting explosion was a silent, brilliant flower of light and debris. "A reckless maneuver," Serafina stated, her hands already working to stabilize the ship. But Jax could feel the truth through their bond, a spark of grudging respect. "You call it reckless, I call it improvising," he shot back, a grin touching his lips for the first time. "It's what I do." Before she could reply, a new presence filled the cockpit. It wasn't a ship or a sound, but a feeling, a profound, ancient cold. 3 shimmering ethereal figures materialized between them. They were vaguely humanoid, composed of swirling starlight and cosmic dust, their faces indistinct but radiating an aura of immense, timeless power. "The children of the Covenant have arrived," they spoke in unison, their voice a chorus of whispers and chimes that seemed to come from inside Jax's skull. "The Union must be consecrated," Serafina groaned. "The Arbiters, of all the cosmic nuisances. The balance requires the right of alignment," the Arbiters chimed. "Beneath the twin sons of Kirill, your bond must be sanctified or it will unravel, consuming you both in its chaotic dissolution." A new set of coordinates flashed on the Vagrant's main screen, overriding Serafina's controls. The ship, against her will, began to turn. "Great," Jax muttered. "So we have religious fanatics, a psycho ex-fiancé, and now ghost referees chasing us." "They're not ghosts," she corrected, fighting with the controls. "They are the living embodiment of the ancient laws my father is so fond of. They enforce the covenants." Suddenly, a massive ship dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of them, dwarfing the Obsidian hand cruisers. It was a behemoth, a warship of black, jagged metal that seemed to absorb the light around it. The sigil of a clenched armored fist was emblazoned on its hull. Malakor's flagship. "Serafina!" A voice boomed over their comms, a voice dripping with possessive rage. "You cannot run from your destiny. From me. Surrender, and I will be merciful to the vermin you've chosen." "His idea of mercy usually involves a quick disintegration," Serafina said grimly. The brand on Jax's hand burned with a fresh intensity, and he was flooded with a wave of her revulsion and hatred for Malakor. It was so potent it made him physically sick. "We're trapped," Jax said, looking at the screen. Malakor's ship was in front, the remaining cruisers behind, and the Arbiters were inside their damn ship. "The game's not over until the last card is played," Serafina said, her eyes blazing with a fierce light. She looked at him, and for the first time he saw her not as a prize or a problem, but as a fellow player trapped in an impossible hand. "My father chose you because you know how to win when you're supposed to lose. So, wildcard, what's your move?" Jax looked at the array of enemies, at the impossible odds. The gambler's thrill, the intoxicating rush of an all-or-nothing bet, surged through him. He could feel her desperation, her defiance, her will to survive. And he found it mirroring his own. "They're all here for you," he said, a crazy idea forming in his mind. "They're all playing by the rules of the Covenant. So we use the rules against them." He pointed to the Arbiters. "You said they enforce the covenants? All of them?" "Yes," she said, her eyes narrowing as she began to see where he was going. Then let's file a grievance, Jax grinned. He turned to the shimmering figures. Oh, arbiters. We, the united parties of this marriage covenant, wish to formally accuse High Lord Malachor of contract interference, illegal pursuit, and generally being a sore loser. The arbiters paused, their starry forms swirling. The lead arbiter tilted its head. The accusation is unorthodox, but valid. A formal challenge must be answered. A channel opened to Malakor's flagship. Malachor of the Obsidian Hand, the arbiter's collective voice boomed across the comms. You stand accused of covenant interference. You must cease your aggression and answer the challenge at the designated sacred site, Chiral. Malakor's enraged roar was cut off as the arbiters dematerialized. Seraphina stared at Jax, a slow, incredulous smile spreading across her face. You just sued a galactic warlord using a 1,000-year-old magical loophole. I told you, Jax said, feeling a surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. I improvise. She laughed, a genuine, startlingly beautiful sound. She gunned the engines, and the vagrant shot forward, leaving the stunned Obsidian Hand fleet behind as they plotted a course for the twin suns of Chiral. For a moment, there was only the hum of the engines and the quiet hiss of the life support. The immediate danger had passed, but a heavier, more complex tension settled in the cockpit. The brands on their hands glowed softly, a constant, luminous reminder of their forced intimacy. That was either the most brilliant or the most suicidal thing I've ever seen, Seraphina said, her gaze fixed on the swirling vortex of hyperspace outside the viewport. Let's hope for brilliant, Jax replied, leaning back in his chair. He could still feel the phantom echo of her laughter, a warmth that was entirely unwelcome. So what exactly is this rite of alignment? Seraphina sighed, the playful energy gone, replaced by a weary gravity. It's the heart of the Covenant's magic. The arbiters will force a full merger of our consciousness, a shared mind. Every thought, every memory, every secret, exposed. Jax felt a knot tighten in his stomach. His life was a carefully constructed fortress of bluffs, half-truths, and memories he kept buried for a reason. The idea of someone, anyone, seeing behind that wall was terrifying. They want to see if the bond is pure, she continued, her voice laced with bitterness. If it's based on a foundation that can support the power of the Ascendant Throne, if they deem it unworthy, they'll sever it. The feedback is usually fatal. And what if they approve? Then the bond becomes permanent, irreversible. We would be one mind in two bodies forever. She finally turned to look at him, her golden eyes searching his. There would be no more lies, no more secrets. No more you or me, only us. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken fears. He could feel hers as clearly as his own. The terror of losing her independence, of being subsumed by another after fighting for her freedom for so long. And she, in turn, could surely feel his dread of being truly seen. My father's grand plan, she whispered, was to throw two strangers together and hope their desperation would forge a bond strong enough to fool ancient cosmic entities. The man is insane. Or he's a better gambler than any of us, Jax countered softly. He looked at the glowing brand on his hand. This whole time, he'd been fighting against it, resenting the invasion. But that stunt with the arbiters? It wouldn't have worked if he hadn't felt her defiance, hadn't understood her situation on an instinctual level. The Covenant had given him the winning card. There has to be a way to control it, he said, thinking aloud. A way to play the game without showing our entire hand. Her eyes lit up with a familiar, dangerous gleam. A cosmic con game, she breathed, catching his meaning instantly. They want a pure bond, a shared mind. What if we give them one? Not by force, but by choice. It was a crazy, impossible idea. To build a bridge of trust between them here and now, to selectively share memories, to build a facade of a perfect union so convincing that it would fool the arbiters themselves. It would require absolute vulnerability, a trust more profound than any he'd ever considered. It's the ultimate bluff, Jax said, his heart pounding. We'd have to show them just enough truth to make the lie believable. We would have to trust each other, she finished, her voice barely a whisper. She extended her left hand, palm up, into the space between them. A simple, profound gesture, an offer. He looked from her hand to her golden eyes, seeing not a princess or a prize, but a terrified, defiant woman offering him the only weapon she had left, a sliver of faith. He hesitated for only a second. Then he reached out and took her hand. As their fingers touched, the brands on their other hands flared with a brilliant, blinding light. The ship's cockpit seemed to melt away, replaced by a chaotic storm of images and feelings. Her memories, a lonely childhood in a cold, gilded palace, the crushing weight of prophecy, the cruel, possessive face of Malachor. His memories, the warmth of a family he'd lost, the desperation of surviving on the streets, the constant gnawing fear of being worthless, a fraud. They saw the truth of each other, the raw, unfiltered pain and hope. It wasn't a full merger, but a deliberate, terrifying exchange, a foundation. When they came back to themselves, the Vagrant was dropping out of hyperspace. Before them, two suns, one of gold, one of silver, bathed a crystalline planet in a sublime, ethereal light. Kirill. They were still holding hands. "Well," Jack said, his voice hoarse, "that was intense." "The game is on, gambler," Seraphina replied, her voice shaky but firm. She squeezed his hand. "Let's not lose." The Ash Temple on Kirill was a structure of impossible beauty, carved from a single planet-sized crystal that refracted the light of the twin suns into a constant shifting rainbow. Malachor was already there, waiting for them on a floating platform at the temple's heart, flanked by his elite guard. The three arbiters hovered above, their starry forms casting long, dancing shadows. So, the street rat and the runaway princess arrived to play their final, foolish hand. Malachor sneered as Jax and Seraphina stepped onto the platform. His eyes devoured Seraphina, ignoring Jax completely. "This farce ends now, my love. The arbiters will see the truth and grant you to me as was always intended." "The covenant is with him, Malachor," Seraphina said, her voice ringing with a newfound strength. She stood close to Jax, their shoulders touching. He could feel her resolve, and he fed her his own confidence in return. "The challenge has been made. The right will proceed," the central arbiter floated forward. "The covenants are ancient. The balance is absolute. We shall now see the heart of your bond. You will be joined. You will be judged. The world dissolved." There was no pain, just a seamless, instantaneous blending. Jax was Seraphina. He felt her life as his own, the centuries of tradition, the loneliness of her power, the terror of being a pawn. Seraphina was Jax. She felt his grief, the sharp edges of his loss, the desperate hustle for survival, the secret fear that he was nothing without his cons. They saw everything. The wall they had tried to build, the carefully selected memories they had planned to show, were instantly obliterated. There was only the raw, absolute truth. This isn't a bluff, he realized in the shared space of their mind. This is an execution. They'll see we're a fraud, her panic echoed his own. They'll see we were forced together. But then something else began to surface. Beneath the fear and the secrets, the bond itself pulsed. It showed the arbiters not just their pasts, but their present. It showed them in the cockpit working together. It showed Jax's audacious bluff against Xylo and Seraphina's grudging respect. It showed her taking his hand and him accepting. It showed their shared terror and the desperate, crazy decision to face this moment together. It wasn't the pure, prophesied love the arbiters expected. It was something messier, something forged in chaos and desperation. It was jagged and imperfect. It was real. Their bond is unexpected. The arbiter's voice echoed in their shared consciousness. It is not of prophecy. It is not of destiny. It is a product of choice and chance. Malachor, connected to the right as the challenger, felt it too. He recoiled, his thoughts a venomous shriek of rage. "Lies! A trick! They are nothing!" He poured his own power into the connection, trying to rip them apart, to show the arbiters the discord, the fear. But his attack had the opposite effect. Faced with his violent intrusion, Jax and Seraphina's consciousnesses didn't fracture. They clung to each other, a desperate, instinctual act of mutual defense. Their shared will, their shared desire to survive became a shield. "Enough," the arbiters declared. The connection snapped. They were back on the platform, gasping for air, stumbling but holding each other up. The brands on their hands no longer just glowed. They burned with the steady, unified light of the twin suns. "The rite is complete," the lead arbiter announced. "The bond is chaotic, unprecedented. But it is not false, it holds. The marriage covenant is upheld." "No!" Malachor screamed, drawing a wicked-looking energy blade from his belt. "If the ancient laws will not give you to me, then I will take you by force." He lunged, not at Seraphina, but at Jax. Seraphina moved without thinking. She threw herself in front of Jax, her arm raised. The energy blade struck, and she cried out in pain. A deep gash sizzled on her forearm, and Jax felt it. The searing, agonizing pain was his own, but something else came with it. Power. Her power. The raw, cosmic energy of the Ascendant Throne. A force she had never been able to truly touch, now had a conduit. The Covenant, solidified by the rite, had opened the floodgates. Jax roared, a sound of pure fury, and threw his hand out, a wave of incandescent silver energy. The light of the comet's tail from Seraphina's hair erupted from his palm and slammed into Malachor, sending him flying off the platform and into the crystalline abyss below. Silence. The obsidian hand troopers stood frozen, their leader gone. Jax looked at his hand, then at Seraphina, who was staring at the wound on her arm, then back at him, her golden eyes wide with shock and awe. "The Covenant has found its balance," the arbiters intoned. "A wild card to ground the air, a royal heir to empower the card. A new age begins." The arbiters faded, their duty done. The troopers, leaderless, began a hasty retreat. It was over. They were alone, standing in the light of two suns, their minds still echoing with the remnants of each other. He could feel her pain, her shock, her gratitude. She could feel his fear, his protective rage, his relief. He reached out, not with magic or power, but with his own hand, and gently touched the wound on her arm. The glowing sigil on his hand pulsed, and a soft blue light flowed from his fingers, knitting her skin back together until not even a scar remained. "I guess," he said, his voice quiet, "there's no me or you anymore." She looked up at him, and the smile that touched her lips was genuine, breathtaking, and completely unguarded. "There's just us," she said, and for the first time the thought wasn't terrifying at all. It felt like winning. If you enjoyed this journey through the cosmos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales from the worlds of science fiction and fantasy. Let us know in the comments, would you risk it all in a game for cosmic stakes? Until next time, stay stellar.